young state senator, then Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Next, we see him swimming with small infantile paralysis patients stricken by that malady. He headed a nationwide fight against infantile paralysis, and the Warm Springs Foundation in Georgia was his favorite place of recreation. In spite of the physical handicap, he continued to progress in public affairs. He became governor of New York, and then was nominated for the presidency on the Democratic ticket. He was elected and inaugurated.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
The banks closed. President Roosevelt taking financial measures against the Depression. Social Security founded as he instituted a series of New Deal reforms. Program of public works to relieve unemployment. The president here starting the operation of the Norris Dam. His first two administrations concentrated on...
We have survived all of the arduous burdens and the threatened dangers of a great economic calamity. Fear is vanishing and confidence is growing on every side.
With his grandchildren, he was infinitely human, a lover of laughter and of the out of doors. His fishing trips were famous. But the dark peril of war was looming with the Nazi aggression. Franklin D. Roosevelt foresaw the peril to freedom, democracy, and universal peace.
I have seen war. I have seen war on land and sea. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen men coughing out their gassed lungs. I have seen the dead in the mud. I have seen cities destroyed. I have seen 200 limping, exhausted men come out of line, the survivors of a regiment of 1,000 that went forward 48 hours before. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives. I hate war.
With his mother in the days when there was hope that another world war might be averted. King George and Queen Elizabeth entertained by the President and Mrs. Roosevelt. The visit of the British sovereigns to the United States increased British-American friendship. The warships of the fleet reviewed by the President. American sea power becoming the more important with the outbreak of the European War. And in Canada, with the Dominion at war, the President declared a fundamental American policy.
I give to you assurance that the people of the United States will not stand idly by if domination of Canadian soil is threatened by any other empire.
The Lend-Lease Bill signed, aid for Britain in the war against Nazi Germany, armament for all who fought against aggressors, and American opposition to Hitlerism was formulated at the first meeting of President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Winston Churchill on a warship in the Atlantic. America sought to restrain aggression, and President Roosevelt, whom we see attending church there, conducted patient negotiations. Then Pearl Harbor, and in Congress the American declaration of war against Japan.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Casablanca, and at another Roosevelt-Churchill conference, the President reviewed American troops in the North African invasion and decorated two heroes. The American part in the overthrow of Nazi Germany has begun. Tehran Conference, the participation of Stalin making it the Big Three. Then the President and General MacArthur in a Pacific War Conference attended by Admiral Nimitz. As the nation's war leader, President Roosevelt won a fourth term and took the oath of office. His new administration began with victory in sight, and he emphasized post-war world organization to preserve peace. The Yalta Conference in the Crimea was the climax of the great international meetings in which Franklin D. Roosevelt played an historic part. Here, final plans for victory and world organization for peace were made by the Big Three, Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, the diplomatic pinnacle in the career of America's war president. King Farouk of Egypt, as the president returning from the Crimean Conference, conferred with Oriental potentates. Ibn Saud, Lord of the Desert. His last public appearance, reporting to Congress.
I come from the Crimea Conference with a firm belief that we have made a good start on the road to a world of peace. And I am confident that the Congress and the American people will accept the results of this conference as the beginning of a permanent structure of peace, upon which we can begin to build, under God, that better world in which our children and grandchildren, yours and mine, the children and grandchildren of the whole world, must live and can live.
With the American delegation to the San Francisco Conference of the United Nations, the news was heralding victory, and on that day, the victory president died at his favorite Warm Springs. President Harry S. Truman becomes president. He takes office in a crisis of history, when world war must be followed by an organization for world peace. President Truman announces that he will follow Franklin D. Roosevelt's policies and help bring to realization the Franklin Delano Roosevelt dream of world peace. Warm Springs, Georgia, there's grief among the child patients for the passing of their best friend. The fight against infantile paralysis was dear to him. As the funeral train rolls across the southern countryside, people throng for a last farewell to their wartime president. In Washington, at Union Station, new President Truman, Secretary of Commerce Wallace and White House advisor Burns come to pay homage. Secretary of War Stimson, Admiral Leahy, and Philippine President Osmeña, and members of the Roosevelt family. The mortal remains of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was President of the United States during years of dread crisis, are borne to the White House with stately ceremony. Hundreds of thousands line the sidewalks, and among them, many in tears. Humanitarian and champion of democracy, he had won the hearts of millions, and now they must say goodbye. Throughout all the nations in the fight for freedom, there is grief, as there is here. To the White House, the casket is reverently taken. And there's Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, a figure in funereal black, followed by family members in mourning. Members of Congress who, with President Roosevelt, have borne the burdens of decisions in the global war. Earl of Athlone, Governor General of Canada. Harry Hopkins, President Roosevelt's friend and advisor. In the White House, where he bore the killing burden of the wartime presidency, Mrs. Woodrow Wilson, widow of the First World War president. British Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden, Charles Evans Hughes, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Bernard Baruch, advisor to President Roosevelt, and the 1944 Republican candidate Thomas E. Dewey. Hyde Park, the Roosevelt home, and a last resting place in a garden. Honor Guard of West Point Cadets, President and Mrs. Truman. Chief of Staff, General Marshall, Fleet Commander Admiral King, James A. Farley, War Secretary Stimson, Canadian Prime Minister Mackenzie King, Secretary of State Stettinius at the graveside, former Governor Lehman, and Treasury Secretary Morgenthau. In the solemn words of the liturgical prayer, grant him, O Lord, eternal rest, and let light perpetual shine upon him. Truman, long a senator and then vice president, is expected to work closely with Congress, to which he states his policies as the new president.
It is with a heavy heart that I stand before you, my friends and colleagues in the Congress of the United States. Tragic fate has thrust upon us grave responsibilities. We must carry on. With great humility, I call upon all Americans to help me keep our nation united in defense of those ideals which have been so eloquently proclaimed by Franklin Roosevelt. So that there can be no possible misunderstanding, both Germany and Japan can be certain beyond any shadow of a doubt that America will continue the fight for freedom until no vestige of resistance remains.